This is quite the social hour going on right now.
Too much yakety yak.
Call the Apache Junction work session to order. Roll call.
Mayor Surtee,
Here.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Here.
Councilmember Barker,
Here.
Councilmember Evans, Councilmember Rizzi,
Present.
Councilmember Struble,
Here.
Councilmember Waldron.
Here.
All members present. You've got to have a quorum, Your Honor.
Presentation, discussion, and update on the January 17th, 2017 direction to staff to revise and amend Apache Junction City Code. Dave Zellner.
Oh, I don't have to introduce Dave then. Well, I was just going to introduce Dave. Well, this is kind of a check-in. You know, back in January, you authorized us to work on the subdivision code, the wireless code, the zoning code, building codes, and fees. So this is just a check-in, kind of give you a progress report.
Mayor and Council, thank you for allowing me some time to talk about where we are on the fees. We've got the instructions, direction to staff in January, and so we've begun working on those. And one of the things that we already knew kind of going in is that we didn't have some of the fees that people come to us and want to do, need permits for, moving buildings and stuff like that. So one of the first things we did was we wanted to identify those activities that should require a fee. So we started working with that. We're also looking at, the new codes that we're going to be adopting. We'll have some things that probably weren't in the fee schedule in 2006 just because of code requirements. You have in your packet, and I may open the, let's get to the desktop. It's a little easier to read in the PowerPoint. So as you look at this sheet, the activities and service, the ones in white are the ones that we already have. So you can kind of see just by the amount of green that we have a lot of things that we either have a made-up fee, somebody kind of came up with something and it's been used for the last 10 years or so, or we just have to kind of wing it. And that's not really good for people that want to, everybody wants to figure out a budget for their project, and the permit fees are definitely a part of that. So they either have to ask us, and then we're asking questions and trying to figure it out. So the green items represent things that need fees added to them or an extra explanation and that kind of thing. So there's just kind of, I don't know if anybody had any questions. Walls themed. I know when we had the new thing going in at Hitchin Post, that was kind of really not a fence, but more of something else. We really didn't have something, so we've kind of looking for a fee for that kind of thing. We're talking about a technology fee. Most departments around the valley are having a specific fee to kind of be able to pay for a good program, to do plan review, digital things, offer online services. So that's something we're also looking at. So that gives you an idea of some of the different things that we're looking to either add or, incorporate into our fee schedule.
Dave,
Yes.
can I ask a question? On defining the deliverables,
Thank you.
the one category was 1 and 2 family service breakdown sheets. Explain why it's 1 and 2. So it'd be like a single family and a duplex.
Right.
And my question in that, because a fourplex is still considered single-family financing, why did you take it to the 1 to 2?
So the way the building code is written, we have a residential building code and a commercial building code. The residential building code is actually specifically for 1 and 2 families. So they look at duplexes as being under the same. And the thing about the residential code, it encompasses the mechanical provisions, the plumbing, the electrical, all in one book. When you get to commercial, you have commercial code that has exiting and structure and stuff like that. Then you have a separate code for mechanical, separate code for plumbing, separate code for electrical. So for convenience and just use, they had combined those two, and it was just looked at that, and what we could do single and then 2 family, but it just seems to be easier just to group them together and say, okay, this is a particular code matchup that we were looking at.
And I understand one of the confusing things in this type of, that's the way the one code's written, but the rest of everything else makes it considered single-family financing until you get past 5. So you're calling it 1 and 2 on one aspect, that's only residential. So on this aspect, it's commercial, but on this aspect, it's residential. That's a
Right.
confusing part for any citizen. Why are you now charging me commercial?
Would it be the case that most people that will be developing more than 2 units will probably be more versed in kind of the dynamics and stuff as opposed to somebody that's just normally used to looking at single family, or?
Do you know a normal? Because I don't.
Well, you know.
Seriously.
Well, I mean,
You know what I mean? Some
right.
are and some aren't.
The codes change pretty dramatically from the 1 and 2 I mean, as soon as you start doing anything more than 2 units, you're now, sprinklers are required, you know, ADA can kick in, stuff like that. So for the builders and developers, I think they're kind of used to that differentiation. So maybe some of the other mortgages and stuff like that aren't as used to it. But I think most of the developers and builders, once they, you know, get above the 2, they know they're into something different.
So just take any of our fourplexes that need permit work, because some of them are in dilapidated state.
Right.
Everything that they will use will go automatically into the commercial side, whether it's 1 unit or the whole thing.
Yes, if they're doing remodeling on a unit in a fourplex, then the codes that would govern would be the codes for commercial, because that covers multifamily. The actual fees and stuff like that, one of the things I was going to talk about is that, you know, we want the fees to be less about what they're building and more about what it takes. If you build X, it takes us this many trips. So we have an idea that, you know, if you're building a single-family home, that it's going to be 10 inspections, and we should just charge for those 10 as opposed to, you know, it being kind of random or whatever, which, you know, right now it's based on valuation and size and stuff. And so I think you will see that as we evaluate remodeling in a fourplex, it's going to look closer to a fee for just a residential remodel, because that's kind of what it's going to take to do it. Now, plan review may be a little more, you know, in depth, just because we have to look at different books. So there may be a little higher at the plan review and lower or more matching on the inspection.
So will there be like some section that will explain that 1 and 2 family fall under this category, 3 and more all fall, whether it's 3 or 25, it goes to.
Yes, I think there will be some explanatory, there's more than just that probably needs to be explained. So, you know, figure the fee, you know, some of the fee schedules you look at for cities have very little, and they just go straight to numbers, and you're looking at it going, well, how is this being applied? And I don't really want to leave those questions out there. I mean, some things you do have to kind of address by policy, you know, but in general, I really wanted people to be able to look at it and go, okay, that makes sense. So like in defining the deliverables, you know, we want to look at the services that, you know, sometimes the service is printing extra plans for people. They lost their plans and they can't get them, so they ask us to print them or whatever. So, you know, there's different services and different costs to provide those services. So we're looking at the deliverables, you know, as far as application processing, plan review, inspection, certificate of occupancy. So one example of that, I'll bounce over again. So I started working with 1 and 2 family home. And again, that's because there's one code that kind of governs those together. So we're trying to break out the activities that actually go into accepting the application, doing the plan review, covering zoning review, building review, flood if it's in a flood. And so we're actually hoping, you know, doing this to also give people a guide and say, okay, we're charging you this. This is what you get for it. This is what's covered in that fee. Right now, we really don't have anything that really tells that. So it kind of establishes, here's kind of a checklist, the types of things, and basically I just kind of went through the code and the things I know that come up in plan review and tried to identify those things. Another thing we're looking at doing is, we want to kind of have a base house. So we're maybe looking at fees from 1,000 to 2,500 square feet are going to be one fee, and then if you do a 2-story house, maybe there's an additional, because adding a second floor, there's some things in plan review that are different and stuff like that. So we want to kind of shape it more so that maybe there's some menu type things so that you have a base house. They know I'm building this. This is my fee. I don't even have to ask the question after I do the first one. And then if they add an occupied, we see occupied rooftops. We've dealt with a few basements. I don't know that we'll get more basements after Superstition Commons, but so a couple other things that are kind of unique, we're like going to put those out as an extra, so it's not built into the base fee. So if you're not doing gas piping, there's no reason to pay for a gas piping review and inspection. So we're trying to kind of differentiate some of those things. And then we're spelling out what actually goes into the different inspections. And so there's, right now we're looking at about 10.5 hours of inspection on a residential house. So once we get the cost, then we'll be able to kind of take that, multiply that. So that's where we're trying to head. And actually, I think, part of the idea is to document so that, one of the things, there's weird stuff in our current fee schedule that I'm like, I don't know where that came from. There's terms good and better, and, there's nothing anywhere that I can find that actually explains that. So we want to make sure that whoever, is here 10 years from now can look at it and goes, okay, now I know the basis for that. Plus, it makes it easier as we're updating, and well, if something changes, then we know, okay, we got to take this or, that out and add that. So defining costs is probably going to be the more challenging thing, and there are multiple costs associated with having the building department. There's the building itself, there's maintenance, there's cleaning, there's direct cost, what it costs to put an inspector in a truck and send him out to do the inspection. So 1 hour of inspector time will be based on their salary and related cost. One of the things I've kind of learned about is, usually you just assume, well, everybody's got, 2,080 hours is but no, you got to take off vacation, you got to take off their sick leave and stuff. So their actual, it's not just what salary we pay them, there's a cost factor because we're training them and stuff. So those things have to get added in, and that adjusts the hourly rate that we look at. We're going to try to get it, as many of those costs. We've tried to define the cost, looking at, the finance department, HR provides a service, IT provides a service. We should be collecting something for their delivery of those services, having the city manager's office and all that stuff. So we want to incorporate that as cost, as well as vehicles, books, codes, things like that.
Your Honor, Dave, can I ask a question? Direct cost, you mean to tell me you're going to calculate the cost based on 2080 hours minus vacation and sick leave to come up with cost each and every time? Is that the plan?
No, I think one of the things, so we know that our inspector, we're going to try to have 100% of our inspectors, he's an inspector plan reviewer right now, but of that person's salary covered by the fees. I mean, that's all they do is building department stuff.
Yeah, I understand.
Inspection plan review. So there's the cost that HR, this is what we pay them every, hour or whatever. But when we're actually figuring the cost to have them go out, it's actually higher than that because the time they're not able to do inspections, because we do have them go to training. They do get vacation. Our inspector's been here 15 years. He's, got quite a bit coming, so we have to plus we have to replace him if he's not here. So there's a cost to do that.
But isn't that training cost part of what he does?
See, that's what I say too,
Yeah.
that I wouldn't take out
If you do, right, if you don't do the training cost, there's a cost to teach this person to do this particular inspection, and that cost needs to be incorporated in there, I would think.
No, it will be. What happens if you don't take it out, if you don't reduce their hours to what they actually can do for inspection? So probably out of the total 2080 hours, our inspector can probably do about 1,600, 1,700 hours of inspection and plan review. So that will be used to determine the cost as opposed to the 2080.
But that varies, it can vary year to year.
So our goal is this is the backdrop. He's given you some backdrop on the effort that we are trying to make, and Joel can tell the theory behind the doctrine of rational nexus of what a local government can charge for our city. We have noticed that we are lagging way behind in terms of our ability to charge for this service that we're providing. So we've challenged staff to come up with a rational nexus, and it can be based on these things that Dave's, calculating. And so that's, our goal is to come up with that and then show you what that number will be, and then you get to say, yeah, that's too much or too less, and then we can go back and kind of reevaluate.
Mayor. So what you're saying is every budget cycle, you'll come up with a fee if it needs to be changed based on our direct costs because of, they go up. If we give salary increases and such things, they would go up along with just inflationary costs. And so on an annual basis, those fees would have to be looked at again, based at the budget time? Or?
It could be, or maybe you look at a 3-year window and you have a reserve or whatever so that those things kind of get taken care of in that reserve and you don't really have, I don't know that you want to revisit it every year.
Fine.
But some cities do. Some cities, that's just an automatic part of their thing. My guess is in a lot of cases, those are just, they take 2%, multiply that by whatever, and that's gone up 2%.
And then
So-
if we get to a point where we have to hire a second inspector for whatever reason, then that would change it because they would probably, well, maybe not be paid less, but the calculation would be changed.
It might a little bit. Right now, we're actually trying to base everything on having a separate plan reviewer and inspector as far as how we create that, because we don't get to, right now, we're not providing the level of service we could if we had a plan reviewer that was in the office to help people at the counter and stuff. So we're trying to look at, the service level we want to offer, and then what is that going to cost to actually produce. So the big thing is, our cost, it's not going to be 100%. But we want to get it as close as possible. One, for legal purposes, we're supposed to have it in line and be able to explain, okay, this is what it cost us to deliver this service. So I think we're just taking it maybe a step or two beyond what maybe it has been done in the past to really try to work out, what does it take for this? And I think defining that stuff helps a lot of different things in our we don't have a standard operating procedure. This will be kind of help build some of that, this is what needs to happen at this and that. So it's kind of a multi-prong approach, but the idea is to get a fee schedule that anybody can say, okay, yes, I'm getting what I pay for, that kind of thing. So, cost is the getting that from, I know like the water district and sewer have some things, and we're hoping to use some numbers that they had for kind of figuring their budgets and stuff, just so we can use that. So there will be, at some point, there's some administrative stuff that's hard to assign to a particular inspection or plan review, and so there may be some flat amounts that are added to the fees. But one of the other things we have to look at is we don't want, so like in this example, if we use this and said, okay, we issue 600 permits, all of them are going to have an extra $100. Well, some of our permits aren't even $100, so we don't want to take them up. So we'll kind of say, okay, this number of permits is kind of this percentage, and maybe that gets, so that we'll be looking at applying that over more appropriate. A large commercial probably should have a fee that's a little higher on, share of the direct cost.
But what if you don't have the 600? Or what if you go way over 600? You said it's projected. Then what do you do? All right.
Ask that one more time.
If you go way over, if the permits go way over the 600, if you project 600, if it goes way over or way under, are you going to adjust accordingly, or?
Bryant, back when we peaked, how many were we doing?
We were up in the 600 housing permits per year.
So possibly 1,000.
Yeah, we could get there again.
We'll see what.
But the state land would have to be open, and if we were ever to do something like that, we would work closely with staff on maybe bringing in a contractor to help out for a little bit, and then we'd start hiring on staff.
What kind of goes through my mind is if you use numbers like, say, you project 600, if you don't reach that or you go way over, you're going to be continually changing the fees around. That's, and
Well, one of the items for the council to consider is a lot of cities that are going to, the model is called enterprise funding. So basically trying to capture the cost of what that service is from the people that use the cost, the developers, the builders. But one of the issues is, so when we take in a permit fee, some of that money is for stuff we haven't even got to yet. You know, it's gonna take them a year maybe to build out, so they're paying ahead for an inspection that we need to make sure we've got somebody on staff to do that inspection.
I understand,
So-
but you're basing this on a projected number of building permits that we may or may not reach, is what,
Right,
that's
and-
my question in my mind.
Right. Well, I mean, right now, I don't know that anybody even knows if there's I don't think we even come close to recovering the cost of our department at the moment.
No, we don't. We fully subsidize it.
Yeah.
So if we go to an enterprise fund, then we're talking a major public policy
I think
discussion.
that's my point here, though. My point is, if you're gonna use a number of 600, you're gonna be continually adjusting that all the time.
No.
Which is a lot of work, So if you say this year we're gonna project 600 and you don't reach it or you go way over it, does that mean you're gonna adjust that permit fee?
Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Waldron, I don't know if you recall, but for fees, you do have, at the end of the ordinance, a 5-year look-back time. And you've asked for staff to put that on every fee ordinance. We may have missed a few, but generally, that's what you've wanted. So I think every 5 years, we were supposed to relook at all the fees.
Okay, that makes sense to me, because I
Yeah.
could see annually adjusting this thing all the time, and
And I
that
don't
kinda
think you
defeats
have to
the
do that.
purpose.
I don't think you have to do
Okay.
that. And there's some cities have been challenged by the Goldwater Institute on their excessive fees. Wait till you see my small selfies. Those were state mandated, and also those fees, wouldn't even come close to getting back what it would cost to look at reviews. But when it comes to the building division, this could be an average, and every 5 years it should be looked at.
So this is, like you said, a starting point for us, like we've been subsidizing it, so we've got to start somewhere, so.
Right.
Yeah, I think what always gets me is one of the hazards is when creating regulations, if you get too specific, then you're continually
Right.
making adjustments, and so you wanna make it as broad as possible, so you're not going in there every year or whatever and making those adjustments. That's why you don't name individuals in policies, so you don't have to change it every time that position changes. That's my point.
Right, but I do think we want to, you know, if we do a reserve or something, we want to be intentional about kind of that coverage. And yes, there is the possibility, I mean, one of the things is that building permit volume goes up and down. And so you want to be careful, and so most places that do this do a reserve fund, maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 6 months. But I think that, you know, most of the building people, contractors are gonna understand that provides the continuity of service that they want to see. So it's a cost they're willing to bear. So, you know, yes, right now, there's gonna be some broader strokes, and then at some point, you know, it'll get a little refined. But I think when we say that, you know, a residential permit is made up of this review, this inspection, that's gonna help, I think, everybody to some extent. So, and then the costs and stuff, we'll probably figure out. You know, this change, you know, because it's 10 years, it may be something that we want to look at it in 3 years as opposed to 5. Just, you know, one question is, are we going to be able to adjust it to where we want it without really, you know, a huge jump? I don't know. My guess is it's going to be pretty big. But so we talked a little bit about some of the things that cost. We just want you to be aware that we're trying to make sure we're looking at all those things and, you know, trying to account for them. So indirect costs, we talked about some of the different departments that provide us services. We want to try to capture some of that. So setting the fees, once the deliverables and cost have been established and fees begin to take shape, some questions arise. So for example, for a 1- and 2-family home, does a flat fee for specific size ranges make more sense than a variable fee? You know, for an inspector, you know, the difference between $1,500 and $2,000 as far as his time on site and what he's looking at isn't a huge amount. So, you know, do we want to go ahead and just say between here and here, this is it, as opposed to, you know, if it's $1,501, now you got another $1 permit fee. I don't know if that really works out very well. So that was one of the things we wanted to look at. So currently, the valuation is linked to square footage, so the fee is higher for a larger house. But you could have a larger house with less actually features in it and stuff like that. So, but that's one of the questions that is we have some more data that we'll be able to bring back. So comparables we looked at, so I think we have kind of the list of the 9 comparable cities, and then we may have, I can tell you it's kind of hard finding some of the other fee schedules. Some of them have them in their ordinance. Some of them, even though they're in their ordinance, they don't have them online like we do with American Legal, and so it was kind of difficult. And then some of them, it's even hard once you find it to figure out what it was actually supposed to do. But we put together a table. That one I definitely need to pull up on the. Why did it go there? Because when I put them all side by side, they got real tiny. So I'll zoom in. All right, this is going to make. Oh. Hopefully you can see that a little bit. So we did a couple things. So we looked at what they were charging. We also looked at the activities that they had. So one of the things, the very first thing at the top line is the year of adoption. So Avondale is 2016, Buckeye is 2013, Casa Grande is 2017. I don't want to do that. Let me go down a little bit. Marano's was 2014, Maricopa, City of Maricopa 2014. Queen Creek 2017. Oro Valley is actually older than us. They're at 2005, but everybody else is within 2 or 3 years. So we looked at the things that they had on their fee schedule. That's kind of how we also added to our activities, but then we also looked at the cost. So most of them are, I'm guessing everybody looks at everybody else's, so you don't see a huge swing in some of the fees, whether or not they actually did, a real detailed cost thing, I don't know. But we did one of the other things we did give you is a comparison on a single family home. So we modeled a home. And so the comparison one of the comparisons we did was just to what if we did. So when I've looked, there's some different websites you can go to that tell you what kind of inflationary rate has gone on between 06 and now, and it's about 21%. So if you do Apache Junction with inflation, it just tells you, so our fees should be running closer if you just take it as the inflationary index, about $250. The valuation of a single family, we did a 2,000 square foot home, should be about $255, which lines up with what Casa Grande currently does, Goodyear does, Queen Creek. So that they've kind of all, followed in line. I'm guessing they, probably looked at that. So you can see the differences in the fee schedule, what they're currently getting. So Casa Grande is running about $1,800 more than we are on the same size house. Queen Creek's only about $792 more. So there's kind of 2 parts to, there's the establishing the valuation, and then there's the whole table that you plug it in and figure out, per the dollar and stuff like that. So there's different ways you can raise your valuation and then drop what the fee is at that level. There's different ways to kind of manipulate it. Yes.
I just wanted to ask a question concerning, since we're surrounded by Pinal County and Maricopa County, and I didn't see anywhere in here where we actually did a comparison of what the county is currently.
And we can look that up. I do think one thing to consider is the cost structure is probably a little different for the county than the city. So, but we can definitely look and see what they're charging, and see what kind of things. I don't know when they last did their revisions. And you want both Maricopa County and Pinal County?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just a couple miles down here is Maricopa.
And when they did the revision, because in looking at your chart with all your tiny little numbers, I only paid attention to Avondale, Casa Grande, Queen Creek, and the manufacturing, because it was 2016 and 2017. So to look at the other cities that had updated a long time ago like we did, I thought it wasn't relevant. But it was quite apparent that we need to charge more money.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, one method, of adoption is you pick the one you like out of somebody else's, but I think the difficulty there then is though we don't have a way to really say that we know that that reflects our cost. So I think we do want to go through the exercise and identify those things and then come back. And then look at those. So we can take out some of the ones and we'll put in Pinell County and Maricopa County, and then some of the ones that are 2013 and stuff we can take off. And I'm guessing some of those are, if they're 2013 or 2014, they're probably in the process now of reevaluating, so.
And I wanted to say too, the one thing that I really liked that Queen Creek did is on the first page, they have any fence that can block water, they have a higher permit fee for.
Right.
And I think that's an excellent idea with the washes that we have around here and things with people building in the washes, so that we can say, look, you didn't get a permit to do that, you blocked the water, and
Right.
now we have damage.
Yeah, I think we can't fix that just by the fee, but if we're going to fix it in the ordinances, we need to make sure. And we may have some stuff that'll be in the fee schedule that will be, activated when the ordinance catches up. So, we may have some things that only come into effect at another point. So, but yes, that is one, and that difference reflects what, it's gonna take somebody to analyze it, and you need to pay for that time. So it'd be city engineer, looking at that and figuring that out. So we did try to look, make sure that as we looked, one thing we get asked for a lot is expedited plan review. We want to build that in. I don't know how we'll do that, whether that'll be an outside service or what, but we get asked that a bunch.
Well, they kind of all said 2 times the plan fee.
It's usually pretty hefty, and I've been surprised how many places would pay it. There is an underlying assumption that if they get the expedited plan review, that it's not looked at as closely. Anywhere I've ever been, that's not true. But the builders and developers kind of have convinced themselves that that's the fact. And, all it used to mean when I was in private side was that meant I had to stay up all night doing the plan review. So it didn't change what I looked at or how much. I might have gotten sleepy, but, essentially they got the same review as anybody else, just quicker. So, and I don't, in most cases, since we're within 3 or 4 weeks, it doesn't gain anybody as much as they think it would. So, plus we have the fire has to look at it. We really can't, dictate to them. They have a time frame and stuff like that. So, but it'd be nice to at least have it and say it's there, and if somebody needs it. So I think I'm almost done.
Okay.
Pop back. Yes.
What's BOV?
Based on valuation. Sorry.
Valuation?
Right.
You were trying to come up with a B.
Sorry. So there's, ICC puts out a table. At the time our fee ordinance was probably adopted in '06, there was some type of valuation table floating around. Basically they try to take the construction type, whether it's wood, masonry, steel, and then assign a value, how much it was, at one time I think it was tied into like RS means, which is a big dictionary of construction cost and square foot, if you're changing this much roof of this type, it would give you a fee. So it was tied in. I don't know that it's done that so much, but it's just a measure of being able to say, okay, a hospital, if you build it this way, is gonna cost $200 a square foot, and if you do it this way, it's $100, and that kind of thing. So we may still utilize that for commercial. I think in residential, we're either gonna be higher, like right now our awning, we're charging or valuing awnings at, on mobile homes at like $16 a foot. And had a guy come in and he's like, I get like about $3 or $4. So, we need to really adjust that. So I think basing it on what it takes, the inspector, whether it's, 600 feet or 100 feet, it's about basically the same inspection. So we'll try to look and get those kind of in line with that. So, go ahead.
So this chart chart is a base chart of what everyone uses. So to be more fees or less fees. But are these like, on the left-hand column, are they like codes that any city would anticipate having?
Okay, so we're talking about, I want to make sure.
In your
Yeah, in the comparison
tiny
table?
little numbers, yeah.
Right, so what we did in the A column, I listed any unique fee I put there. And so, you know, some of them we liked, some of them we didn't think we needed. So we didn't pull everything from that list, but we did add that one we first started
So
with.
this was a list you created,
Right,
not just.
right. I literally pulled up everybody's, you know, fee schedule like ours, went through it and said, okay, they do this, they do this, they do, you know, there's nothing that I know of, there's nothing floating around that does that other
Okay.
than this. So some of them probably sound similar, some of them are, some of them, you know, it's funny, you can tell what problems they've had, you know, based on some of their fees, and, you know, fees get made up for different things that, you know, but like decks, you know, there's, you know, fees for decks, but, you know, what constitutes a deck, there's actually, you know, height and size. In most cases, we don't really want to be worried about a little 3-foot, you know, landing that comes off a house. That shouldn't really trigger, so, you know, we're looking at some different things. So, you know, so we think, you know, we want our department to be high functioning, highly rated, and so we want the fees to support the computers, the software, the technology, tablets. I mean, everybody in our office has to basically call back to the office if they have a question out in the field. Is there a permit on such and such? Well, then somebody looks it up and that kind of thing. We really want to get past that where somebody can actually look and say, oh yeah, okay, check it in the field. I'm constantly calling back in when I'm driving around going, I don't remember seeing this permit. So we want to get to that. You know, defining the deliverables serves two functions: provide scoping of the work being done for a fee, and highlights to our customers what is being reviewed and inspected. And I think just, you know, low fees, there's a lot of times that, you know, the fees are a concern because it's going to limit activity. We have the lowest, it hasn't really affected our activity. I mean, there's other factors I think that are more important than the fee. So, you know, we want to look at that and be ready for what's coming. Any other questions or?
I just have one comment. I recently became a patient of Arizona Dermatology. They could not speak high enough of your department and how efficient and how fast everything went through. That they were just amazed.
Well, good.
So good job.
We had fun working with them too, so. All right,
Could
well, I
we let
appreciate
Dave
it,
go?
thank you.
Your Honor, I just want to make sure this is the work session, so any other sensitivities, because we are talking about a new international billing code. It's been a long time. Thank you, Dave, and your staff. This is great, but anytime we talk about fees, we want to make sure those sensitivities, if you have any, please let us know. He's doing some great comparisons, doing some great background. We just want to make sure we're on the right track, and I think you guys are, say, keep going. Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
Another fun topic.
Yeah.
Presentation and discussion on entering into an agreement with American Specialty Health and Fitness. Jamie Sullivan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have 7 slides, and I talk fast. So if you need to slow me down, just interrupt me, so by all means. Tonight's agenda items, number 2 and 3, presentations with OptumHealth Care and Ash Fitness contracts will be covered together, as those are similar programs. The Recreation Department has had a long history of working with one premier party fitness program, Trivia, better known as Silver Sneakers. This program and others like it allows our seniors with qualifying insurance companies to utilize our facility at no charge. Their insurance companies pay a third-party provider who then reimburse the center for their visits. In recent years, more and more companies have made this benefit available to their clients. We have received an overwhelming response from our community with interest to add more of these programs. Tonight, I'm presenting on 2 of them, Silver and Fit, which is also known as Ash Fitness, and Optimum Health. To give you a little bit of background on Silver Sneakers, We've had them since 2007, and it's been very successful and well-received within our community. They have major health insurance providers such as Aetna and AARP, and last year, Silver Sneakers generated almost $62,000 in revenue, with 974 unique users visiting almost 24,000 times. That is a lot of fitness happening in our center with Silver Sneakers. So we would like to bring on Silver and Fit. It is another large program with over 120 participating insurance companies. They have almost 7,000 eligible participants in our area, and their rate of reimbursement is $26 per month per person. A smaller one, OptumHealth, which only covers UnitedHealth Care, will be new to Arizona in 2018, and there are several other municipalities that are already on board to receive them. While they don't have almost the same amount of number as Silver and Fit, they still also have an impressive 2,000 eligible members in our area. Their rate of reimbursement is at $4 per visit, capping at $32 a month. Reimbursement from these companies is better or similar to our current fees that we have in place. Many private clubs and city recreation centers have these programs already. After extensive research and negotiation of contracts, thank you, Joel, I feel these companies will be good partners for us. Insurance companies can change their benefits every year, adding them or changing to different programs. I want to expand our options to the community so that they may utilize their health insurance benefits, which will make them happier and healthier in our community. I recommend adding and entering into an agreement with OptumHealth and Ash Fitness. Tomorrow, I will bring both agreements back to you for your final approval, and your considerations are much appreciated.
You are quick.
Questions?
So that was two and three, correct?
There are 2 and 3, this agenda item 2 and 3, and it's 2 contracts, one with Ash Fitness and one with Optimum. We already have Silver Sneakers.
So we'll have 3, not just.
We will have 3 programs, yes.
Krista has a question.
Once we get contracted with another one, how long does it take before the consumers can start coming and using them?
So Optimum is not actually eligible until January, so we're in front right now. So we'll be ready to go. We'll be able to market that. We have that. When we get our, when and if our contract is approved and signed with Silver and Fit, we'll start the process of getting our account set up with Connie. I am optimistic that we would be able to roll December 1st.
So it sounds like our older community, these are people that have, these programs are for mostly seniors?
They are mostly for seniors. It is their secondary insurance, but also there are some folks on there that are disabled that are receiving those same types of benefits. They're eligible also.
The numbers are incredible.
They are incredible. And if you ever have an opportunity, like our Silver Sneaker classes, we actually have classes that are geared for senior populations. They're 80, they're 90, they're in there, they're working out. It's incredible to be able to see them taking advantage and being able to use these programs. And I do know that Mesa and some other private locations will have these programs, and I want our AJ residents to be able to do this right in their own backyard.
That's very inspiring.
Jamie, what age do they consider senior? Stop laughing at me.
You're eligible, Gail.
I think that would depend on your health insurance.
So, I mean, you know, housing, it's 55 plus, but some things it requires Medicare, that's 65.
Most of them are Medicare plus your supplemental, but again, what I would tell our members is check with your health insurance because they get to dictate which programs they take.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I may. Ash Fitness basically sued, or actually maybe the other way around. There were 2 competitors, and it was a nasty intellectual property lawsuit that dates back probably 6 or 7 years ago when Liz was working on it. And it just got nasty, and that's why it took so long to get the extra vendor. And Optum is actually, they were the resulting beneficiary of that because they didn't have to fight the battle. They're a new company. But it took a lot to get us here. especially the negotiations were very difficult. They didn't want to give on anything. There was Medicare provisions. When you see the contracts, you'll see plenty of that. And they had to have those in there. They would not budge. And there were other issues getting the contract from one of the companies. They had this super secret cloud security. You couldn't get into it. Even when you put the password in, it didn't work for me. I guess they don't trust outside attorneys. Exactly. But it got resolved. I mean, Liz had a wonderful time with them, but Jamie inherited the project and did a very good job on it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
If nothing else, then thank you, Jamie. Okay. Presentation and discussion on placing speed cameras in front of the schools. Councilmember Rizzi will present.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have any, a big presentation, but some concerns had come up over the last year or so from parents and community members regarding issues of speeding, people not following the laws or the speed zones in our school zones. And I had talked with Chief a couple of times over a period of time in regards to his thoughts on possibly bringing speed cameras to our school zones. And so we had a meeting. Brian, if you could refresh my memory, I can't remember the company that we had met with, but we had a meeting with some city staff, several captains from our police department, and they did a small presentation explaining, you know, what it would cost, if it would cost, how it would work, how it would be beneficial, and all of the ins and outs. And Brian could.
Correct. So there are several different companies that do these the different vendors that provide these services, and I think we're just in the exploration of how this works. How does it work in Mesa? How does it work in Chandler? These other cities. The company that came in this case was American Traffic Solutions, but there's others, and we're just trying to figure out the sense from a city council standpoint. So this, from my perspective, is the pre direction to staff before direction to staff comes, because this is can be a big discussion in the community about, is there a concern for our youth on something like this? Yes or no? And if there is, how do you approach it or look at it? And this is one method. There's others.
I imagine we're all going to have some input on this. Let's just start down here and come this way.
Did you?
Oh, I get to start. Wow. I think it'll be a great thing to look into and to see. I know driving through the valley, I'm not going to say around every school there is cameras, but it seems like around a lot of schools there are cameras set up, or at least if not cameras, they have the flashing speed limit signs so that you know how fast you're going according to their measurement. I think it might be a good thing to look at.
Gail?
Do we give out a lot of tickets for speeding in school zones? We do? And, okay, because this is one of my concerns. Because of my job, I'm all over the valley. We have, our school zones are 25 miles per hour. I don't know of one in Mesa or Chandler or Gilbert that's not 35. And it's confusing and kind of appears to be a speed trap more than anything, because I find myself, like in town, because I always set my cruise control when I'm in a school zone, because I don't trust myself. But, you know, besides checking into the camera part, you know, are they doing 45, 55, or are they speeding or not slowing down at all?
Well, Mayor, Council, Chief Kelly, Apache Junction Police Department, it's a variance. I mean, we have them going, 50 miles an hour through them. We have them doing, 10 miles over the limit, but it's we spend a significant amount of time. I say we, the traffic officers spend a significant amount of time down by the high school just on the U-turns, which are posted all over the place, and people continue to do U-turns to go back onto the 60. But the speed, the guys are routinely writing traffic citations there. Number, I didn't prepare for any presentation this evening, but I could get the numbers for you. But we've run traffic down there to find out what the variables are, and 10 miles over the limit. We've had them as high as like 65, 70 miles an hour through the school zone. But they're all over the board.
So if I can answer one of those questions, the speed limits are actually consistent in school zones. It's 25 and 15. When you're between those signs, it's 15.
It's always 15 between the signs.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so that's the issue.
But because when Yao was here, him and I had a discussion, and he said it was a past school superintendent that actually set our speed at 25, because the inconsistency with just going onto Signal Butte, it's still a 4-lane with a turning lane, it's 35. Yeah. It's 35 on McKellips, Power, Brown, they're all 35. So that's why my question was, are they going 10 miles over, or are they going 55 miles? You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, I understand the speeding thing, but I've never liked the inconsistency that we have 25 where the rest of the valley seems to be at 35, except for in the posted.
Right.
And because even at the high school, well, on Southern, there's a crosswalk where you go down to 15, but like in front of the high school in that, there's no crosswalk where you go down to 15, which would actually slow people down further if that was there. But that's why I was curious. How fast are they going over?
Well, the speeds are, it's all over the board where they're at.
Okay.
And the officers are, give a little bit of leeway to the people, but, when it's posted and flashing, and I think we've done as much as the city can do in concert with the school district to give the flashing lights and warnings on numerous occasions in there, but it's one of those things that's, your discussion to figure out, and with the one presentation we did have, that's one thing that this one company did say, that whatever the speed limits are, however over, under you want, that's a city council decision, what you would want them to do, so.
For the ticket part.
Correct.
Yeah.
Chip?
Yeah, well, just so happens, I was on, over in Mesa by, what's the high school over there for my grandson.
Red Mountain. No?
Skyline.
Skyline, yeah,
Skyline,
thank you. And was driving my 35, which is what the speed limit is, and I got past like I was sitting still.
Oh, yeah.
And saw the wonderful flashing light came on, and I know he was going well over 50 by me in the aspect on it. Of course, today was the first day of school for them to be back in, and so yeah, I know that is a problem. I've even seen the aspects of it continuously going on, and it's, I'm going to say, really and truthfully, I do not want to have to ever answer to a parent, a relative, on a child that is hit and happens to be killed, involved on somebody excessive speed. So, yes, let's definitely look into it and find out what we can do.
And I'd like to also find out if it's a shared cost between the city and the school district, or is it only one pays for it?
We can certainly have the different perspectives on that. There's different models. Mesa does it a certain way, where they purchase all the equipment and then kind of contract out the company to do the technology, because it's the technology behind it that gives the judges and everything the backing on being able to get the revenue from it. It is another way is to have one of these vendors do it and try their very best to get it to a no cost to the city. What I find ends up happening is that the tickets related to these type of enforcement actions end up being more expensive than had our staff. So if we were to do a ticket and it was a speeding ticket, I don't know exactly what it'd be, but we could find that data, but these are significantly more. And so the residents are gonna get that, and there's the pros and cons. You'll hear both sides. our practice has been that at the beginning of the school year, we have a strong presence. You'll see our staff out there, our police, working it very hard. It's been able to go back. And so we're not as strong out there right now because school's 9 weeks in, but we wanted to help remind the public the safety of the children out there at the beginning. This is another method or option for us to look at for that if you want to point us that way.
Dave?
Could I just answer Gail real quick? I'm sorry. And so the purpose of bringing it, Gail, was to get the opinions of all the council members to find out if we would even want to have a presentation. And so they have all the information where we could ask more questions if we go with the presentation.
Dave?
Well, I think there's always some inherent problems when you set up a camera this day and age. You've got, people who see it as an invasion of privacy, and then you've got the service of the ticket issue and all that kind of stuff. I suppose it doesn't hurt, but consistency to me is more important. Imagine Prep, it's 35 on 16th, but you go over to Avalon, it's 15. And there's no crosswalk at Imagine Prep, so there's no consistency between charter schools and public schools. So to me, that's kind of critical, but I guess it doesn't hurt to see a presentation. I mean, I'd like to see some numbers and, costs.
I would like for also you all to get feedback from our public as
that's the big one.
the word starts getting out that you're looking at. I think you're going to get some.
And then do you run it, 24/7, 365, or just during school?
Because that's another aspect. We have the whole Avalon, Imagine Prep, and then our area of the Unified School District area, Southern and San Marcos, where it's busy. But there's also Baseline and Ironwood. We have a higher proportionate share of potential public safety issues there on that intersection.
Robin?
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing, I'd be interested in us exploring a variety of companies, not just one, and hearing the options that come from several different companies. I think cameras have presented an interesting problem in the metro area. Some cities have completely gotten rid of them because of the battles that were fought over I wasn't driving and that's not me and somebody took my car and blah, 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 blah. And I would like to see, what several different companies have in mind. And I also feel that it'd be very important for the city to share any cost with the school district. I think that's an important part of it.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Council, you probably want to hear from the court also
Yes.
and see what Judge Hazel says, and also the police department. And these are Title 28 tickets, Title 28 they're Title 28, which are traffic. So I think a lot of the money goes to the state, and then it would be tacked on if the city was to get any money. That's how they would normally do it. You'd probably also want to do an RFP if you're going to ultimately choose a company.
Well, I will be completely against this. I think that people have a right to face their accuser. And you look at places like Star Valley, which I hate Star Valley. I never spend any money there because of this. I agree with all of the putting the radar out there. I think it's great to have our actual cops out there. It shows them in a good light with what's going on in the world today. I think it's better that we'll have police officers close in case there's an emergency to have them out there. You're right. And process servers, the people that ignore them, then you got to send process servers out. You got to pay them. And from what I know of these companies, they've been very corrupt in the past with Red Flex and people like that. So I'm, of course, not against looking at it, but I'm going to have a hard time voting yes on it. Anything else? But let's bring it back then
The
for,
consensus is to have a presentation from,
yeah.
Yeah, and the only one that other component unit of the city is the IT department. I definitely want to understand how that would impact us, and definitely recommend from city manager's office, something like this, it would be cost neutral.
And if nothing else, maybe we get some other tools out of this, like some other enforcement.
Or we learn a little bit about other ways to enforce too. There's lots of different methods to help keep everyone safe.
Okay.
And I think it's important to look at the consistency of It is.
Yeah.
The miles per hour, because we are, I always find myself going, woo! Because I'll naturally go down to 35, and then it's like, no, I'm back in AJ.
So, yeah, there'll definitely be some good come
Yeah.
out of looking into it. But
Which for Gail is hard to do from 70.
While you're at it, you could change it on Meridian from 16th to,
So,
What's that?
I said, while you're at it, you could change the speed limit on Meridian from 16th south. Or Delaware.
She's recommending we do an analysis of Meridian Road as well, on speed limits. Mike, you got a lot we're working on too then. Mike Weaver's on it.
moving on. Does anyone want to go get some caffeine before we get into this next one? Presentation and discussion on telecommunication and rights-of-way enacted legislation. Joel Stern.
Caffeine was not my first choice.
Whiskey?
Mr. Mayor, wow, this is weird. City Council, I'll try to make this as painless as possible for me. But you are the bosses, and I want you to try to understand, this is the second time you've seen this legislation.
Right.
You saw it first in the new laws memo that I did. And that was back in August. Okay, are you letting go the controls, Matt? So I can go?
You're driving.
Okay, very good.
Get Joel go.
Yeah.
Technology.
This is a first.
Get him a smartphone.
It's one button.
Oh, sorry.
And we apologize for the confusion, Joel, on the one button, but
Okay. That's the title. Telecommunications and rights of ways. Okay, so far so good. HB 2365. This was proposed by a group of industry cell telecommunication companies. And actually, it's already been, parts of this was passed through the federal law, which I've referenced. And I'm not going to read every single slide unless you want me to. But essentially, this was passed by the governor. He signed off on it without very little opposition. I think the league was caught off guard, and I think there's some city attorneys from Chandler, Mesa, and I believe Gilbert that got together and got with the industry and tried to compromise on what they first proposed. What they first proposed was a lot worse than what we have, although this is still not the greatest legislation. The big date I want you to keep in mind is February 9th, 2018. That's when you have to have everything passed by. And if you don't, a company could come in and they could say, basically the next slide, what does this law generally do? You can't say no to these sightings. When I say sighting, I mean they can say, we want to put an antenna on a sidewalk, and we're going to put it, and it's going to be our design. So you want to have design standards. So what you have in the packet, you have the ordinances that affect the fees, and also the Chapter 13. And under Chapter 13, it's a little different than what you're used to. There's Appendix A and Appendix B. And that's the design standards and also the standard terms and conditions, which includes the right-of-way agreements that would be signed with the companies that allows them to encroach into the public right-of-way, and also some other things such as a letter of credit and also assignment documents. What are small wireless facilities? They're also called small cells. So low-powered wireless base stations that typically provide coverage for targeted indoor or localized outdoor areas, including homes, office, stadiums, shopping malls, hospitals, and other metropolitan areas. So what that is, it's mostly for the new technology. And I'm going to go on a history lesson here. It's not in the slides. The father of the cell phone was Martin Cooper, and he was with Motorola for many, many years. In the 1970s, he had his bosses agree to spend $100 million on creating a cell phone, and not just the car phones, because that was radio waves. So he, in 1983, was the first person in the world to actually make a cell phone call, and it was from a Dynatac 8000. It cost $9,000 in 2011 dollars. It weighed 2.5 pounds. And there was a 20-minute talk time. And then after that, you'd have to recharge it for 10 hours. That's what the first cell phone was. And that was in 1983, and that was the first cell phone service. And since then, you now have everything. But not quite everything, because they want to do cell phone towers that actually make access available to everybody for every technological device.
Even Joel has one now.
Well, you know, it's funny you mention that.
Break it out, Joel.
This creates now this is according to the industry. It creates technology for smart cars, Internet of Things, and 5G, fifth generation wireless technology. Just for demonstration, this is a cell phone, by the way, if you don't recognize it.
Where's the crank?
Well, in tiny, tiny print, it says 3G capability. So I'm waiting for the 5G, just to let you know. Also, the industry wanted to eliminate municipal regulations, have more transmitters where the population is located, increase backhauling services, the links between cell sites, controllers, the switches, increase cell phone coverage, and high-speed wireless data services.
I love that.
I do
I think
too,
that's hilarious.
For the public, it's a guy in a jail. He says, "I sound funny, yeah. I'm calling from my cell phone." Okay, I'll move along.
That was cute.
Raise the bar on that one.
You can read yourself if you want, but essentially this is what the compromise was. There are things in the documents that does allow us to do certain things. They have set our rates and our fees. They will not let you go above a certain amount, and that's because some cities and towns did charge an incredible amount of money for just a cell phone sighting on private property. They would charge thousands and thousands of dollars. And so that got into the industry to the federal level, and essentially the state lowered a lot of the fees. So essentially you are subsidizing use of the right-of-way. That's another thing. It's in the right-of-way. We're talking about rights-of-way only. We're not talking about private property cell phones, cell towers. Once again, the deadline's February 9th. I want you to keep that in mind. There's also a 60-day time period where you have to have the fees that the public can see. They're on the internet now, and they would be essentially the maximum fees that we can charge. I'm not going to read all this, but this differentiates between small wireless facility and other wireless facility. And you'll see under, here's in the revised statutes 9-591 and following, all of the new regulations that apply to the types of antennas and wireless facilities. Oh, let me go back. The one thing I do want to mention is if you have an antenna array that is in the right-of-way, it'd be not more than 60 cubic feet in volume. And as for the equipment that would go on the ground, that if it's already been installed as of whenever this was, I think it was August 25th when this was effective, then you could have 50 cubic square feet. If it's after that, it'd be 28 cubic square feet, and this is to illustrate 60 cubic feet is that antenna, and what you see at the bottom is, it looks like a freezer, and they call that the dog house. That's the name that they call it in the industry. So that's basically 50 cubic feet. What you see is Mr. Kramer. He was one of our technological experts that we've used in the past. He was giving a presentation to a city or town, and he's demonstrating the 28 cubic feet, what that would be on the ground. And that's his assistant, Ms. Rekovovich, I believe her name is. Utility poles. Here's how it works. If they want to put in their own pole, they can do that. If they don't want to use their own pole and they want to put it on a light pole, a street light pole, they can do that now. And if we own the light pole, we have to say yes. Same with the traffic lights. They can do that also.
What if the light pole is owned by, say, SRP?
If it is, then no. If it's owned by us, then yes.
They have to be owned by us?
Correct.
Okay.
Also, if they have a utility pole that transmits electricity with wires, that is not covered under the statute. So street lights, that's what you might see these in Chandler already. I think that was taken in Chandler. And then you also see the traffic light where they added the antenna at the top.
Joel,
Yes, sir.
one question, are the poles reinforced? Will they add this additional weight up there?
Yes, there is provisions in the documents that I've attached that cover those kind of technological issues and engineering and structural engineering issues, which we can do if we get it in before February 9th.
You know, 'cause I can see with that additional weight up there, which is designed just strictly to hold the light, that you would have a potential problem in some of our high winds.
Okay.
And we would be able to assess them a fee for adding the additional?
Yes, the fees are included in this presentation and in the attached. There's also, and then they have to sign an agreement, and that sets forth insurance regulations also, and indemnification and other things that were not covered by the legislation, which was part of the compromise. The first edition, or the first version of the legislation, the city could not do anything. And there's other states that, I think 18 other states got similar legislation. California, they were given legislation that is actually worse than ours. And I think the governor is going to veto the bill over there, believe it or not. Stealth and concealment, basically that means the city can have regulations so that these things are camouflaged to some degree. They have to be reasonable regulations. For example, Paradise Valley, I'll show you a slide. They only allow monosaguaros. So they won't allow the big ugly antenna at all. They have to camouflage it in that manner. Paradise Valley has findings that set forth how they can do that and why they do it because of the values of the property. And there's very little wires in Paradise Valley. Everything is undergrounded. That's another issue. But the value of their property, they consider one of the biggest priorities, and they have findings that establish why the monosaguaro is the way to go. And then if the company says, oh, well, we can't meet that, there's a process where they can actually appeal that. Now, in this case, most cities and towns are not making them do a single type of camouflage or stealth. So I think the industry would not like that, but they did talk to Paradise Valley at length on that issue.
Have we all seen the palm trees?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And there's pine trees.
Yeah, in the middle of palm trees.
You can,
But we can set design standards that they must meet.
absolutely, you can. They have to be reasonable. What is reasonable?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, who
There-
determines the
Well, the
reasonability of
city-
your standards?
The city will determine that, and then if they don't like it, they can probably try to get an appeal of that and then go to court at one point. Hopefully they won't, and I don't think they will, depending on what you require them to do. If it doesn't comply with the design standards imposed in a contract between the authority and the private owner, that's our agreement, you can deny it. Doesn't comply with public safety and reasonable spacing requirement also. Timing, that they have 180 days from the date that they get their permission to be in the right-of-way to finish it. If they don't, they would have to start over. The co-location, if we have an agreement where they can put another antenna on another pole that has an antenna on it already, our agreement says 10 years, and the statute allows 10 years. So then they would have to renew that agreement. And this is just more of the same for utility poles. I'll just move through that. Okay, there's some examples. There's the saguaro. I don't know how tall that saguaro is, but that's what Paradise Valley, I think, has legislated. The buffalo on the hill, I forget where, and I want to give credit to my assistant, Melissa. She did a wonderful job finding these photos, and I don't know where she got that one from, but there are 3 antenna arrays on that buffalo. The light pole is interesting. That's a good one. And then there's the big rock.
What's behind that rock?
What's in the rock?
Oh, what's in the rock? It's in it.
And this comment says, for the public, at least they no longer look like cell phone towers.
I like the carrots.
It's a
I think
Tootsie
we
Roll.
ought to have carrots.
I like the Tootsie Roll.
And the Tootsie Roll is pretty neat too.
Batching, what that is, that's the part of the law where they can have up to 25 small wireless facility co-locations. And there's a fee schedule for that, which I will get to shortly. And they're allowed to do that, and that's one thing they wanted in the law for sure, because they don't want to get stuck paying a higher price every time they ask for another one. And they wanted to batch them up, meaning they would, for the first 5, there'd be a certain amount. Then after that, there'd be a certain amount, and then it would be capped. And then at that point, they would have to start over and do another permit. Shot clock. What shot clock means in the federal level is you have so much time to approve it. And if you don't, then it's deemed approved. Kind of like in basketball, you have so much time to make that shot. And if you don't do it, then you're done. And then you start a different, well, I'm not a basketball fan, but Liz is. So whatever that is, the next level. Okay. So, thank you. So it's deemed complete 20 days after the application. The city has 20 days to tell the company, hey, here's what's wrong with your application. And then after 75 days, which includes the 20 days, if the city does not get back to them and says, okay, you're approved, it's deemed approved. Now, in the federal level, it's 150 days. So the industry really did a lot with this statute. It's much stricter than the federal statute. Okay, terms and conditions, we've kind of already gone over that. Here's another little cartoon. It's a cell tower. It's a flood warning device. It's my tree. It's a little dog saying that.
Yep.
Okay, the fees. Fees for use of the right-of-way may not do any of the following: result in double recovery, be in the form of a franchise, be unreasonable or discriminatory, exceed $50 times the number of small wireless facilities in the jurisdiction. The application fee for the modified or replacement poles may not exceed $750. The $1,000 applies to where you use utility poles. And once again, the time period to look at all this is very, very condensed. To do it in that time period, it's a quick review, especially if you have a lot of engineering documents. And so your engineer would have to look at it. It might have to be sent out depending on how many you're going to get. That's another thing I think I should bring up. How many do you expect to get? The industry says they want 10 small wireless facilities per square mile of the city. So 34.2 square miles, that's the city, times 10, times roughly 4 carriers, and that'd be Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T. Well, the total, it'd be 34.2 times 10 times 4. 4 is the number of carriers. It's approximately 1,368 cell phone antennas.
Per carrier?
No, that'd be total for the city. And according to our expert, who I just talked to briefly through email, he said expect 50% of those within 3 to 5 years.
And we'll have something on every corner.
Probably at the intersections, and then in other places where the companies feel, oh, we need coverage. And another thing, each antenna or each wireless facility can accommodate 75 to 100 users. That's all. So maybe that technology will change over time, but right now, that's it. So that's why you're going to have a lot of these. And they can put them anywhere in the right-of-way that is not a traffic hazard and doesn't violate any of your other rules if they're reasonable. So they could be in front of people's homes. They could be in front of parks. They can be in front of City Hall. Now, the California legislation I saw, they can actually put it on City Hall property and county property. So this is a better piece of legislation, but not by much.
I know you're a lawyer, not a technician, but how much better will the service be? Does anyone know?
I am not the techie guy, but according to the industry, it's going to be tremendous. It's going to be.
But
they
the
say that.
problems.
That's what they say.
Are right out of town. I mean, if you go up by the mining camp, or if you head past Gold Canyon, you do hit some dead areas. What are they going to be doing things out there as well, or?
They're going to do it. They're going to do it wherever they believe they can make money. and where the most of the users are.
Which will probably be the more dense areas first.
Yeah, exactly. The bigger cities and the choice places are the very well-traveled
It
intersections
doesn't
where
seem
most
like
people
there's
are.
a problem in the urban areas, does it?
Well, for some people it is. Some people cannot get coverage on every device that they have.
How about increased safety with like 911s where they don't know the area? Chief, is that going to help, or do you know yet?
They say that will improve. That's what they have convinced the legislature to pass this law. Okay, fees included in proposed Chapter 4. I'm not going to go in. Is Dave still here? No. Well, hopefully I don't get crucified like Dave was crucified. However, these fees, once again, are set by statute. You can go up to what they say. However, if you go below what they are suggesting, you're really going to be subsidizing the industry. And so, once again, you can't really you can't charge a lot to use the public right-of-way. Basically, they're making us, the taxpayer, subsidize the company, basically. That's what they're doing. I'm not going to go through all these, but there's also there's a matrix in the attachments, and I think I have one further down. So once again, where does the statute apply? In right-of-ways and public easements. There's something else in the statute you may see. It talks about zoning and when zoning applies. That doesn't really apply in this case because our city does not include part of the right-of-way for zoning cases. Some cities do, so that's the difference, and that's why I don't have it listed here. Where does the statute not apply? On electric distribution poles, regardless of ownership, outside the right-of-way, private easements. And relocation costs, that one, I think, was compromised, and so they will have to pay for that. Next steps. Work session, I'm going to bring you back on November 6th, because what I'd like you to do is a homework assignment. Take a look at what I've provided you. There are going to be some changes to the design standards and also the terms and conditions. And that's because I got them from the other cities, the bigger cities that are working on this, and they have met with the industry, and they came up with some red line changes that the industry wanted. So you're going to see some changes in the next go-around. I don't think they're going to be significant, but I would like you to read through, and if you have any questions on the technical aspects of this, let's bring them up at that time.
So the vendors wanted even more leniency? Is that what the changes were, do you think, or?
I'm sure they saw the first draft, which was back in April, and then there was a August 25th draft.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they didn't like some of the items, and so they convinced Chandler, Mesa, Gilbert, the team, to make some changes.
To make it less restrictive on them?
Correct.
Yeah.
Joel, is this happening all over the country?
It's happening in at least 18 states now, and I do think it will go nationwide because of the 5G. They're really striving to get that going by 2020, and that would have to be done in every single city and state.
Economically, I wonder if this helps individual economies.
There is the business aspect of it, that if you're more friendly to the internet, that you'll have more business in your cities, and that's one thing that the industry does bring up.
And there are more and more people working from home, and that's one of the, Gail, you probably hear this when you're selling. They want to know about different providers, and if it can happen anywhere, then that does make it easier to sell houses.
If you look at the evolution of antennas from the first ones that were put up on the poles here, they're huge. And everything's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and I can see from a company standpoint of them saying, you know, I can replace this one on this pole quicker than I can get a bucket truck out here and get up that pole. So other than your long distances like you were talking about to use the towers, but those antennas keep getting smaller and smaller. And I can see a day when the big poles are gonna be gone.
And the heights are getting smaller also.
Yes.
40 feet is the height for the right-of-ways. Also, you will see another item from me and Larry on private property installations of cell phones. And there's another law that deals with that, and there's an exception to what you can and cannot do, which was done in 2012. And our code is outdated. However, you will see a change in the zoning code for that part of it, for the private property installations of cell towers. And I think we'll also come back on December 5th for a vote.
And by that time, we'll have any design standards changed or ready to change that we need to do.
You will see a red line of what we propose from what you see today.
Okay.
It probably won't be much, though. It will not be too much different. If it is, I'd be shocked. Chandler's the one that they were the head of the team, basically, and they met with the industry leaders. And I think that's all, folks.
Joel, that actually wasn't that bad.
No. I have one,
Okay, we have more questions, Joel.
Joel,
We're not done yet.
I have one quick question. So in this whole wonderful presentation that you did, it was delightful. What I gathered, we can establish valid reasons for denial. The one section says that.
Design codes, yeah.
Right, so, do we have enough time to have that set in place by the time this becomes effective?
Well,
That's what we're gonna work on.
the language is in the code already for the reasonableness as to what you can say yes and no to. If you want to make additional changes, we can talk about that at the next meeting, because I really want you to take a long read at this. But I think if you pass them in December, I mean, that's pretty good. Most cities haven't passed theirs yet. Now Paradise Valley did. They got in because they were afraid that
They'd lose their saguaros?
that was one reason. But also they wanted to do it before the date of the actual effective date of the legislation. Even though the legislation says that we're effective this date, but this won't have any impact, or it won't have any legal effect until February 9th. And even then, it still says 3 months thereafter an application is filed. However, I think most will probably come in February if they're going to do anything, at least the major intersections.
Is that everything?
Thank you.
Good
Then
job.
we will be adjourned until tomorrow.